and never knew they could buy it. Full with them, had a house full of them throughout the years, but it sent her into an anaphylaxis reaction that we had to rush her to the ER. I had to give her epi at home. And that was just a start of our trials throughout the next few years. From May 23 to December 23, we made 39 trips to the ER. And we had test after test after test. Cancer testing, blood testing, CTs, anything you could imagine we was tested for. We went from doctors from Pensacola, Florida, all the way to Clanton, Alabama, above Birmingham. And in December of 2023, we finally got a diagnosis of mast cell activation. Now, throughout them 39 trips to the ER, she had Benadryl, epi, Pepsid, steroids, albuterol, every single time we went. So it caused a lot of damage to her veins also from all the IVs. 2024, or actually December 23, they finally got us on a medication that the insurance would not cover, and it had to come from Canada. And it was $300 for 90 pills. And we had to purchase that every 3 months. Now, from 2024, it was basically the same thing, but it had got better to the point I could actually treat her at home instead of going back and forth to the ERs. Now, 2025 is when things took a severe turn. And January the 27th, and there's some of these days I'll never forget, that's when it actually started. I got a phone call at 11 o'clock at night from my son, and my son told me that he was getting a divorce. His wife was telling him to leave. He didn't have nowhere to go, didn't know what to do. I said, you do. You have a home, come home, and I'll be there for you. And I did the same thing that every father would do. I stayed up, I embraced my son. As soon as he come in, we talked for hours till I could get him calmed down. Now, 2 days later, Christy had another reaction. They actually used industrial bleach at her workplace and to clean the air conditioning drains. And that sent her in a very bad reaction, coughing the mast cell. Well, I went to the hospital, sat with her till her mom could get there. I went back to work. Later, they actually discharged her. Everything was good. We went home. At 1 a.m., she woke me up and she couldn't speak. Her tongue was swollen to the point it was protruding outside of her mouth, cutting her airway off. So I got her up, rushed her back to the ER. We sat there in the ER for hours and hours with no results of testing, no results of medication, nothing. So from that point forward, they moved her to the ICU there in Bruton, and just to monitor. Well, later that evening, a good friend of ours come by, which is a surgeon at the hospital. He wanted to check on her. And as he was checking on her, he pulled me in the hallway and he said, Jared, I hear stridor. And I've been an EMT 15 years, firefighter 22 years. I knew exactly what that meant. It meant her airway was closing. So we had to make a decision to go ahead and trach her, go ahead and intubate her. Because if we didn't and it got too worse, the next step was a trach, and we didn't want to go that route. So went back in, told her, hey, this is where we're at. This is what we got to do. And they pulled me out, put me in a waiting room while they took care of it. Whenever I come back, it was a sight that no man wants to see his wife in. Tubes going everywhere, medication hung. They had her hands tied to the bed. They had her feet tied to the bed because they could not get her sedated enough. And the medication they put her on was propofol. And it got to the point where they had give her the max dose of propofol. You couldn't give no more of it. What they needed was Versed, and the hospital did not carry it. So they wound up having to use a medication called rocuronium. We used it on Amos, and it would completely paralyze the body to where you don't even have a muscle reaction to breathe. But that's the only way they could keep her sedated enough. Now, they started calling UAB. They declined her. They called USA. They declined her because they had a hospital full of COVID and flu victims. They had no more beds. So our next step was Fort Walton Beach. Now, this was the first step of all this. This was a little bit of weight that God had added to my shoulders. Now, we stayed at Fort Walton Beach for 5 days in ICU, and there was tubes, there was machines, there was pumps everywhere in there. And they took very good care of her and tested and still with no results. So after 5 days, we came home. Everything was good. We was hoping this wouldn't happen again. And I was home for 3 days whenever I got called into the office where I worked. And I was a manager of South Alabama Outdoors. When God said, I'm going to add one more thing to your shoulders, I lost my job because of it, because of Christy being in the hospital. So from that point forward, I went back to work with my dad at our gunsmith business. And during that time frame in February, my dad developed shingles and got shingles on his face and his head. So not only was I having to watch Christy, not only did I lose my job, now I'm having to help my dad with the shingles and run the shop and get him back and forth to doctors for medication. Well, we decided we was going to do a port in Christy's chest. And that was just for easy IV access because of the fact it was getting harder and harder to get medication in her. While she was on the surgery table, she had another reaction. Her tongue swole again. Luckily, the surgeon was my friend. He come in there and got me and said, Jared, it's happening again. We need to tube her again. Fine, let's do it. So we wound up getting her sent this time. First time she was flown to Fort Walton. This time, Eglins doing training. There was no helicopters allowed, so we had to transport her by ambulance, 2 hours. Now, same thing, 5 days, testing, nothing come out of it. And the doctors told us, said, Jared, we don't want this to sound the wrong way, but we've exhausted everything we can do. She doesn't need to come back here. She needs to go to a university hospital. But the university hospitals was full. They was declining her. So this time God said, I'm going to make you laugh a little bit. So when Christy come out of the tube this time, when they pulled the tube, she was also on Versed. She was also on fentanyl just to keep her sedated. And when I say it was comical, it was a laugh. Christy was hallucinating. She was laughing. It's what we needed. And her mom was there with us. And the laughing part was something that we definitely needed. And we stayed a few more days. We came back home. We was there about a week. God said one more thing. Christy lost her job and we lost our insurance. So now the weight's just getting more and more. And we're battling this. And it's getting to the point now where I don't know what to do. It's heavy. Well, we wind up getting our insurance back. And as we're moving forward, God said one more thing. My dad got a severe GI bleed. So now I'm dealing with Christy, dealing with my son, his divorce, dealing with daddy's shingles, Christy's reaction, her losing her job, and now my dad has a severe GI bleed. There's times that I would have to go inside, help him up, and he would pass out in my arms, and I would have to get him in the bed. So this went on for a couple of weeks to the point to where he was passing out so much, I called the ambulance, said, look, he's got to go to Baptist. And luckily the crew that came picked him up was good friends of mine. They said, Jared, no problem, we're going to Baptist. So they admitted him. So he got better, wound up being diverticulosis. They got him under control. But while he was in the hospital, he started having severe chest pains. So once he got out of the hospital, I had to start taking him to the cardiologist, and they did a heart cath. And now he has 3 blockages that has to be tended to. But they won't do it right now because he's too weak from all the blood loss. The next step, I had to take him back the next week. They did the cath, they did the stents, everything good. He spent a day or 2 in the hospital. I'm taking care of Mama, taking care of Christy. I was blessed to have her mama available to come help me whenever I wasn't there. And then Christy has another reaction. This time she's flown from Flomaton to Baptist. And we had an amazing crew in the ER. That was amazing. The doctor was awesome. He talked to me. I told him all the situation. They started testing. Well, now we're on into April with a 3rd reaction. Same thing, tongue. She spent 7 days in ICU there. When we got out, my brother is a nurse practitioner. He told us that Jared contact Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville. Just go to their website. You can fill out everything and see if they will accept her. 48 hours after we filled the paperwork out, we had an appointment with Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville, Florida. So we made preparations to go. And we went actually a week early because during that time, she had to come off all the medications all the doctors put her on. And it was also getting within that 30-day time frame that she was having reactions each and every time. So we went a week early, no problems, no reactions, seen the doctor, did some testing, ordered some other testing. We got back home. We was home one day. She had another reaction. So this is 1st of June now. She was flown to Baptist again. This time it was harder to do the trach because on the flight going in, the paramedic was looking at Christy, looking at the monitor, and her O2 had dropped down in the 80s. So it was urgent to get her in the ER, get her tubed yet again. And God said, one more thing added. We spent the whole month of June in the hospital. She had 3 reactions, one right after the other. Once they pulled a tube, she'd have another reaction. Pulled a tube, she'd have another reaction. But me and Christy had already talked about it, and we had made the decision that if things was going to get too hard, and with the weather that was coming on, hurricane season, we need to look at getting an airway, a permanent airway, secured airway. So that we had made a decision to do a trach if it was needed. But we did the trach. That added one more thing to my shoulder. Now, not only are we dealing with Daddy, my son, all of Christy's reactions, losing our jobs, our insurance, now we got to take care of the trach because it's highly susceptible for infections. Machinery had to be delivered to the house. We had to have humidified air, suctions, all the equipment to change it and keep it clean. So that was just more and more added on. Then we also had to figure out, okay, how are we going to get to Jacksonville, Florida? Because we got to have this equipment with us. We worked it out. I was able to get some equipment to help me drive and take care of her. We went through multiple other testing. But the reactions changed from every 30 days. Now she's having them every 7 to 10 days. So now we're having to go to the hospital more. She's having to be admitted more. Nothing they can do, but she had a trach. So now her body had to heal because once you're intubated one time, it takes 6 months to recover. She was intubated on the vent 7 times from February to June. So her body was just give out. It wasn't healing. It wasn't doing everything it needed to. Now she has 3 infections in her trach also that we're having to deal with and keep clean. Then we started dealing with doctors that started saying, she's faking. She's seeking attention. They're putting this in her medical reports that she has Munchausen, and Munchausen is faking symptoms, seeking attention, and seeking medication. And we're battling that now, one right after another. Well, we started filing complaints on doctors. Well, when we started filing complaints on doctors, hospital staff started treating us different. Now they don't want to tend to us. They don't want to deal with us. That pushed all the way on up to December. And the doctor at the Mayo Clinic contacted us, a geneticist, and said, Jared, we need to do this testing. It's a very in-depth genetics testing. Sure, we'll do anything. If it'll help us get an answer, help us get a diagnosis, we'll do anything. He said, there's one problem. What's that? He said, the test is $200,000. The insurance will not pay for it. He said, I'm going to send you some paperwork, fill it out, send it in, let's see what happens. They sent the test, Christy did the test, and her mama did the test, and we shipped it back. Now we're just waiting for a bill to start coming in. And Christy gets an email from the insurance, completely 100% denied. They will not pay for it. 5 minutes later, we got an email from the financial aid. They paid 100% of it. Not one single dime of it come out of our pocket. So that was the start of a blessing. So we fast forward it had got back to the point where she was having reactions every 30 days instead of every 10 days. So we was getting a little bit of a break between hands. So we had to be back on April the 3rd. We had 10 doctor's appointments that one day at the Mayo Clinic. So we went down the day before, got a room, got up. We spent all day at Mayo Clinic, all day. Seen doctor after doctor after doctor, got some other diagnosis that we didn't know Christy had. And we got finished, went back to the apartment, said, well, we're resting. We got to get up in the morning. We got to pack up. We got to go home. 1 a.m., Christy wakes me up. She's had another reaction. Her tongue is swollen. I said, okay, I can't drive right now. I take medication to sleep. You're good. We'll wake up in the morning early, get packed up. We'll go to the hospital. And that's what we did. When we walked into that ER and walked up that registration desk, the nurse come walking by. He said, she on lisinopril? No, sir, not on anything of that nature. Not one bit. He went and got a chair and said, come with me. We're going straight on to the back. And guys, let me tell you something. That place is amazing. When we got back to our room in the ER, within 15 minutes, we had 8 different doctors in there asking questions, asking everything. What about this? What about that? How long does this happen? What's setting it off? And each one would say, not my specialty, the spring the other one. And within 5 hours, we seen 15 different doctors. And they was just amazing on what they was doing. They come back, they said, we have your room on the 10th floor in the PCU unit. We're sending you up there. You're not leaving until we get an answer. Okay. Well, at the time, I didn't know it, but Christy had done give up. She told me later, she said, I'm done. Or she was done because it was going to be the same thing, testing. We don't know, we're going to send you home. So she was finished. Our faith had kind of got dwindled down because we wouldn't get any answers. Had so much stress, so much weight on me. I didn't even have feelings anymore. I had lost it all. So at 2 o'clock, a doctor come walking in. Christy was asleep. And he walked up to me, introduced himself, Dr. Sacco. He has a PhD in genetics and a PhD in allergists. He studied in France. In a suit, I said, well, just a higher up doctor. And he introduced himself and we talked for a few minutes and he said, Jared, I don't know what your religious status is. I said, I'm a firm believer in my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. He said, I am too. And I'm probably fixing to tear up, I'm sorry. He said, I was walking out the door when this came across my desk. And he said, I went straight to the other doctor and said, we got to help them. He said, I'm a vessel. God is working through me to help you. And we both started tearing up. And he said, we're going to try medication to see. And we're going to move forward from there. If it works, within an hour, we'll have a diagnosis. If it doesn't, then we'll go to the next step. He said, all these new doctors coming on are scared to death to do anything. Even though you're sitting in the hospital, they're still scared to death to try anything. All these older doctors are set in their ways. They don't want to do anything that they haven't done in the past. He said, I'm different. We're going to move forward. Another doctor come in that was also a geneticist. And what was so good about these doctors was they didn't tower over you and look down. They either pulled a chair up, sat beside you, sat on the bed, or they squatted down on their knees beside the bed and talked to you. The other doctor come in. He talked to us also about everything and what they was going to try, what had been done in the past. So at 3 o'clock, a nurse come in with 3 syringes. And she said, I'm going to take pictures of your tongue the way you are. I'm going to give you a syringe. It's administered very, very slowly. We'll see what happens. I'll do pictures a second time. And we're going to do this for 30 to 40 minutes. They gave her the first syringe, and within the syringe wasn't even halfway done. And Christy texted on her phone and said, the back of my tongue just went down. I feel it. So tears started coming on both sides. I told her, not yet. Let's get further before we lose it. Second syringe, it was time. She started getting the second syringe. Christy started crying more. You could physically see her tongue starting to shrink and go back in her mouth. We both started pretty well crying then. We had the nurse crying. Third syringe, by the end of it, she was talking. And when her tongue had been swelling, she would stay swollen anywhere from 2 to 5 days. That's how long we would have to deal with it. When the doctor come back in, both doctors come in, both of them was tearing up. They said, we have a diagnosis, we have a plan, and we're going to start you on a preventative. Guys, this was Good Friday. And it was, we both lost it. We both cried like babies. Because not only was it Good Friday, we had finally got a blessing and the answers, and the weight lifted off that I've been carrying for the last year. And just to show you how good of a blessing that it was, we got discharged on Easter. He got the medication approved that Monday for one of the preventatives. Got the second preventative approved. The emergency medication, insurance wouldn't pay for it. But we got a second emergency medication. She had another reaction on the 10th. The only hospital close to us is Mobile University at USA University that carries the Barrett. I drove her there. It worked within 30 minutes. So we knew the medication was right. We are going on now to show you how big of a blessing everything is and what God has done for us. We're going 45 days now with no reaction. We are, because of the steroids Christy was on, she was a type 2 diabetic. She was insulin dependent diabetic. The doctor started weaning us off of steroids, and you can't come directly off steroids because it'll cause other medical problems. And Christy passed out 4 times by coming off of it. Yesterday was her last dose of steroids. She hasn't had insulin in 3 weeks. Type 2 diabetes are gone. As I asked for prayers last week, we went and seen the doctor again last week. We was there Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, multiple appointments Tuesday. And they did a swallow test on Christy to check with the trach and everything. And she said if she could have a film to teach, this would be it, because Christy's swallow test was 100% perfect, even though with the trach. The blessing continued because now we're going back next Sunday, back to Jacksonville. They will remove her trach Monday because of everything doing so good and the blessing we received. So it's been a battle. It's been a big battle. But it doesn't matter how much weight God puts on you. One of the things I never faltered from was I never turned from Him. I'd pray. I say, all right, God, you woke us up. You still have a purpose. We took everything that we learned from it and built off of it and moved forward and still gave God all the praise and glory, even during the bad times, because He never left us. So, but I've been talking to Brother Brandon, and he said, you need to tell this testimony. People needs to hear it. And that's why we're here. But like I said, this is our second day in church in 4 years, and we have missed it, and we have loved the open arms and the invitation from everybody here, and we thank y'all very much. And continue with the prayers, please.